You're listening to Flip Empire, the show committed to helping real estate entrepreneurs who want to build their empire without sacrificing their life. Your success and freedom starts now with your host, Alex Pardo.
This may be an extremely controversial podcast episode that you're about to listen to, and I don't care because I think it needs to be said. But I'm starting to believe that taking massive inaction is what you might need to do more of, and taking massive action may be what's actually preventing you from achieving everything you want. My name is Alex Pardo. I want to welcome you to this podcast episode, which was inspired by a silent workout that I had this morning outdoors. And when I say silent workout, I mean it was a workout where I was just alone with my thoughts. There was no I didn't have AirPods or, I wasn't listening to a podcast. I wasn't watching a YouTube video or listening to a YouTube video. I wasn't listening to music. It was just me, myself, my resistance bands, just getting a circuit workout done outside. And what hit me, and the reason I wanted to share this podcast episode with you, is because more and more I have become aware to the fact that we are constantly getting pounded over the head with this message by some of the most famous and successful entrepreneurs on the planet about grinding and hustling and working your face off and taking quote unquote massive action. And while I believe there's a lot of validity to that, I am not here to say not to take any type of action. That would be ludicrous, right? You can't just sit at home Netflixing and chilling. Doesn't work that way, right? But I think it's the pendulum has swung in the opposite direction, where I'm starting to see a shift. I'm starting to see more and more people, and admittedly, maybe this is just in my sphere of influence. Maybe this is just in my ecosystem, where I'm starting to see more successful people that I know, like, trust, and respect, taking their foot off the gas, prioritizing self-care, mental health care, or I should say mental health, and doing less. And as a result, they're actually accomplishing more. So I want this podcast episode, and I'm about to dive in. I want this podcast episode I want you to sit with it. I don't want you to draw any conclusions at the end of it or during it. I want you to just sit with it. And I want you to open yourself up to a different possibility. I believe when we open ourselves up to different possibilities, there's an opportunity for growth, because we only know what we know. And sometimes I think it's important to question what you believe and why you believe it. Do you believe it because it was just planted from when you were a child? Do you believe it because you heard it from somebody you admire and respect and you take it as gospel and truth? Or do you believe it because you've logically thought through it and it actually makes sense to you? So again, I'm going to title this podcast episode something along the lines of why taking massive inaction is what will actually get you to the promised land, right? And when I say promised land, whatever that means for you, whether it's freedom, whether it's whatever it is you're trying to achieve. And I say the word freedom because I find that most people, that's ultimately what they want. I've had so many conversations about people that are quick to tell me their income goal, quick to tell me their revenue goal. But when you start asking question after question after question, it all boils down to freedom. Freedom to do the things they want with their family, their loved ones, the things that they enjoy, the things that fill them up, the things that give them fulfillment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So with that being said, I have, I just alluded to the fact that I've noticed a shift. A coach of mine who I've been working with for, I don't know, probably 6 years now at this point, recently went on a 3 to 4 month sabbatical. And it's his story, so it's not mine to tell. But I can tell you that in just a few conversations I've had with him, he has come back re-energized, reinvigorated. He's come back with this deepened sense of purpose and alignment with an alignment spiritually. He knows his purpose, his cause, and his passion. And from conversations I had with him, it was downloaded by God, which gives me chills even as I say that. So if you heard the last podcast episode with my good friend and fellow ascender, Will Hull, we started talking about spirituality. So if that appeals to you, I definitely want to encourage you to listen to it. If that doesn't appeal to you, I definitely want to encourage you to listen to it. It's kind of the equivalent of, if you don't have 10 to 15 to 20 minutes to meditate, then that means that you need probably 30 minutes to meditate, right? Well, if that doesn't appeal to you, I'm here to encourage you and challenge you that maybe you need to open up your mind and heart to listen to that episode. And this is kind of a continuation of that. So I mentioned my coach who went on a sabbatical. I have somebody else who's very close to me who's really been very intentional about looking at the different businesses he's involved in, looking at everything that's on his plate, and really taking some time and creating the space to figure out what he needs to focus on and where he needs to lean in. And the conclusion he's come to is that less is more. The conclusion he's come to is that by cutting off things that are important to him, but don't ultimately get him to where he wants to go, it's important to rip that Band-Aid off. And there's so many entrepreneurs that I respect them so much for what they've accomplished and what they've done in their business. And then some I know personally, others I don't. Others I see what you see on social media, etc. The ones I know, or at least some of them, I wouldn't want their life. No matter how much money they make, no matter how much they scale, no matter how much they grow, no matter how many zeros they add to their top line, how much their net worth grows, there's a misalignment for me when everything else is broken, or when business is an 8, a 9, or a 10, but other important things like health and family and spirituality are a 3. The good thing is, for those of you listening to this podcast, maybe watching this online, is that I believe you can have both. But in order to do that, I think you need to be very intentional about creating stillness in your life, right? I referenced meditating a couple of minutes ago, and I was fortunate that right before the pandemic, like January 2020, I was taught transcendental meditation, which was in person. It's not something that you can really learn online. I shouldn't say you couldn't learn online, but they say it's supposed to be with a certified TM instructor face-to-face in person. And I don't know how they do it now, but I learned from someone directly. And I can tell you it was so difficult for me. It was extremely difficult for me to sit in silence, quiet, for even just a few minutes. And that was an indication to me that I really needed to lean into this. I had so much chaos in my mind. I had so many thoughts running about the family, the girls, the business, what trip we're going on next, like what team member is not happy because of XYZ, and how can I solve this problem? How can I put out this fire? And I realized that I needed more stillness in my life. I needed to create a space and an environment where I could get comfortable sitting with my thoughts, where I could get comfortable just being. And I mentioned on the Will Ho episode how, the last probably 6 to 9 months, I've gone down this spiritual path that I feel like I've been called to, and it's brought up a lot of awareness. It's actually been more difficult for me to create that stillness that I'm talking about now, that stillness that I think is extremely important for us to intentionally create the life we want to live. And I mentioned in that episode how I was talking to another coach of mine, somebody who I've worked with for, 12, 13 years at this point. And I'm always somebody seeking for growth. I'm very ambitious. I'm seeking to grow in different areas of my life. And for me, I default to, what book do I need to read? What event do I need to go to? What mastermind do I need to join? And the common denominator, the underlying theme in all of those questions is that A, it's external. It's me seeking solutions and answers externally versus looking internally and plugging into the source, AKA God. And then secondly, it's all about doing something, right? And that was the irony that has hit me like a ton of bricks lately, is that this season of my life, and maybe you can relate, maybe you can't. And if you can't, I want you to bookmark or save this episode and come back to it, because I can all but promise you that at some point in your life, you will be here where it's not so much about this or that or the other or whatever it is. Don't get me wrong. I'm still striving for growth in different areas of my life because I truly believe this is something that I've questioned my belief system. But I believe if you stop trying to grow for an extended period of time, I think internally you start to die. At least that's my belief right now. And notice I said for an extended period of time. At the time I'm recording this, we're hopping on a cruise tomorrow for 8 nights. And at the time that this is released, I would have already gotten back from that trip. And I've told myself I'm going to significantly reduce my phone time, and I'm going to not completely disconnect, but I'm going to, if I'm connected at, 90%, I'm taking it down to 10% at most. I'm talking about, checking the phone maybe once a day, maybe if that. And I'm being very intentional about that because I want to create that stillness in my life. I want to create that stillness during this trip to be present, to soak it in, to not take for granted that we have the opportunity to go on trips with our family and have these types of experiences that we've had. So I want you to first ask yourself, am I comfortable in my thoughts? Can I sit still for 1 minute? Can I sit still for 5 minutes, for 20 minutes? And if the answer is no, I encourage you, I implore you to lean in and start to go through that process, because when you create the space, when you intentionally manufacture an environment where there's stillness and you have to be with your thoughts, that's when you start to get the downloads. That's when you start to get the thoughts, the ideas, the creativity that allow you to then propel and slingshot forward. Right. So what I want to leave you with on this episode, and I know it's short, sweet, and hopefully to the point, is that it's less about doing. It's less about, quote unquote, go out there and take massive action. I'm here to tell you, maybe for you, just maybe, it's about taking massive inaction. And hear what I'm saying, and don't hear what I'm not saying. I want to be clear. I'm not telling you to sit on your hands and do nothing all day, every single day of your life. That is not what I'm saying. However, I am telling you that if you could take a day off a week, or maybe an afternoon off a week when you're used to working, and you just spend that time with yourself in your thoughts, whether it's prayer, meditating, journaling, going outside, getting some sunlight for 15, 20, 30 minutes, going on a walk, leaving your phone at home, not plugging into a podcast, not listening to a YouTube, not trying to do something, but just go out and be with your thoughts. I can tell you, if you lean into that and you remain consistent with it, you're going to get so many ideas. You're going to get so much growth, so much creativity, that you're going to be able to intentionally create the life you want or have always wanted. And you're also going to get ideas about, like, this podcast episode was born because I decided not to plug in to something on my phone. And I wanted to just go out and get a quick workout in and just think. And I felt like this was a download that I wanted to share with you. Massive inaction. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, take massive inaction, but I've heard everyone under the sun, at least every thought leader, influencer, podcaster, speaker, publisher, blogger. I've heard everybody say massive action, massive action, massive action. And they're not wrong. I'm not throwing a stone at them, right? But I'm here to tell you that maybe you need to sprinkle in some massive inaction, right? One of the things I've done this year, and I got this from somebody at our last Ascend retreat, brought up how they have challenged themselves and been more thoughtful to take more time off. And that's never really been a challenge for me, but I'll tell you what has been a challenge for me is I've been very regimented with my routine. And one of the things I've done now is I only take calls and meetings. I shouldn't say only, but 95% of the times I only take calls, meetings, coaching calls, podcasts between 1 and 3:30, 4 days of the week, right? And then, 3 days of the week. And then I have 2 days that are just mine. And then Fridays, I have the calendar completely blocked off. So once a month, there's a Friday that's completely taken off. And if I choose to take more time off, I will take more time off. Like, I just finished taking 8 days off, almost 10 days off, actually. And then once a quarter, go on at least a week-long trip where I'm just completely disconnected from email, business, etc. I just set that for 2023, and it's been phenomenal. On a previous episode, I talked about how I've been involved in a couple of one of those quote unquote automated e-com stores that just didn't work out. It just failed. And in the last month and a half, I completely unplugged from those. And I learned a lot. And I can tell you the weight that I have felt being lifted off my shoulders, because I no longer have the responsibility of having to track and manage and try to work with a team to grow something. And I can so little by little, I'm starting to take a sabbatical or completely eliminating certain things. And I'm going to continue to do that until I get to where I feel in complete alignment. And I can't tell you that I'm 100% of the way there, but I can tell you I'm very close. And I feel like I'm on the right path. And that's because I'm continue to try to manufacture and create the space where I can just think and allow thoughts and ideas to come to me and creativity. So I look forward. I think I'm going to continue to just be led and be guided to the content that I share with you, to what I put out, to the people I work with. And I see some really cool things happening in my life. And most importantly, hopefully, if you start to do this, you'll start to see cool things happening in your life. So just consider for a moment, again, don't draw any conclusions from this podcast episode, but just think for a moment, is taking massive inaction at times or in certain seasons, is that what you need to be doing more of and less of constantly grinding and hustling and taking action, right? Like hustle might be a season. And that's okay. There's times when, let's say you're starting a business, you're growing a business where you need to get up and get after it, right? I'm not telling you not to do that. I'm telling you, don't make it a lifestyle. Unless that's just your thing, right? Unless that's just what you want. And then that's perfectly fine because it's your life and you only get one of those, right? So do you, but just be mindful, thoughtful, and intentional about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Is it what you really want, right? Are you pushing and hustling and grinding and you know it's temporary? And if so, great, keep doing that. But are you pushing, grinding, and hustling, and you've been doing it for years? You're not happy. It doesn't feel temporary. It almost feels permanent. I'm here to tell you that this podcast episode should be a bucket of cold water splashed on you. It should wake you up. Start making changes now, because you might wake up in a year, 2 years, 10 years, and then you're really unhappy. You're unfulfilled, and different areas of your life start to suffer because it's all connected, right? So if you want to go deeper on conversations like this, if you want to be fed with business, spiritually, financially, relationally, if you want to be fed in all these different areas, that's why Ascend was created. And that's why it was born almost 4 years ago at this point. So we can pour into entrepreneurs that it's not just about building the biggest business in town or the biggest building in town or scaling and growing and making as much money. That's important. We definitely dive into business and go deep and help you to craft a wealth plan and make the kind of money you want. And while also having healthy relationships, having having a lifestyle that you want, whatever that looks like for you. So ascendyoursuccess.com is the community for entrepreneurs where we go deep on different areas, not just business and not just life, but it's all connected. It's all very holistic. So ascendyoursuccess.com, would love to connect with you and see if it's a fit. And if not, that's perfectly fine. Just continue to plug into this podcast so that I can pour into you. And I so appreciate you. I look forward to speaking with you on the next one. Take care. Hope you enjoyed that episode. But before you go, I've had a lot of out to me wanting to learn more about Ascend, wanting to understand how the mastermind component works, how the coaching relationship works. And so right now we're actually on a waiting list. But what I would encourage you to do is, if you think you're the right fit and you think you could benefit from being a part of our community, head over to ascendyoursuccess.com, watch the short video, and then just click the apply to join button below. And then we'll be in contact with you if and when a spot opens up. So really appreciate you listening to Flip Empire here. And I look forward to connecting with you on the next show. Take care.